And welcome to Pints with Pals. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremy, and with me is the other
Mike.
host.
Oh yeah,
There
Mike.
you go.
Sorry, we
Perfect.
got it.
Oh,
We're
that was
gonna get this
perfect.
eventually.
That's
I'm the
perfect. I love it.
northernmost host is my tagline that I keep forgetting. At least I
I'm in
remember
the.
the name. Oh no, you said it. I was gonna say at least I remember the name of the podcast this time.
I like the name. I think we did a good job.
I don't think we've ever
Good job of
explained. We've ever explained. Yeah, I like the alliteration.
it. Yeah.
We never explained the. I mean, like, there's a double meaning, but that's going to be an
Yeah.
episode for the future.
Yes. When we get our third dose on here, Jason, he'll be here soon. Hopefully we can do some one-offs with him and stuff like that to fill in a lot of stuff because I want to do a show on
Our
like
first.
first beers. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that'd be a great topic. But speaking of first beers, we are drinking a barrel aged Imperial Stout tonight, and it's made by excuse me, the Perrin Brewing Company that Mike just talked about in our last episode. And this is called. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Decadence?
Decadence. Yep, that's how I would pronounce it. This isn't.
Decadence?
So I didn't realize that this isn't actually it isn't actually one of their like main staples. So they have this backyard bash that they basically like open up the backyard of the brewery to like the public and then just have like this big party. And then this beer was something they brewed specifically for that that party, and they just called it Decadence. It is a 15% by volume
Big boy.
barrel-aged stout with big chocolate and barrel character. It's aged for 9 months in a bourbon barrel.
So what does that mean? 15% ABV compared to like a Bud Light at 4.5.
When you drink one of these, it's like drinking 3 Bud Lights or 4.
Wow, like all at the same time?
Yes.
Jeez, oh Pete, that's
Yeah.
that's a lot, bud.
But unlike a Bud Light, it typically, at least what I've experienced, is a barrel aged beer, and barrel aging is it's its own topic. So like we try to get these in because it's getting spring, and then they're heavier and they were a little harder to drink when you want something cold in the summertime and stuff. So like you wouldn't grab a barrel aged beer and then go sit in the sun. So you would really kind of want these to like sit by the fire or something, like a nice warm fireplace, or outside at like a bonfire in the fall. Those are the kind of times that you would typically gravitate toward a barrel aged beer. At least that's what I consider. Like a lot of people will do it whenever, wherever, just because they're delicious. But that's when you're going to find them at like the stores and the breweries and things like that. So the barrel aging process is basically just taking an old used barrel of any kind of sort. So like you can have tequila is like a weird one. We talked about that in one of the other episodes. And then you can do anything from like a port, which is weird. It gives it a lot sweeter taste. Even the wines, they have like a red wine barrel aged stuff. So like the typical ones are bourbon, whiskey, wine, brandy, sherry, and port. Sherry and port being the less common. Brandy, sherry, and port, I think, being the less common. But you will find a lot. So typically the acronym BBA is bourbon barrel aged, and just BA is barrel aged. So you'll see more, I think, bourbon barrel, and maybe I've seen rum barrel. That's not on there too. Rum barrel aged, tequila barrel aged. But those are like, they're trying something different. The rum is definitely sweet in it. But anyhow.
No, I think you're quite right because I mean, just to talk about the sweetness, I was kind of curious, and I was at your house back in February because you asked me that question, like about flavor notes and stuff like that. So I did a deep dive into barrel aging, and a lot of the sweet notes and vanilla notes that you get actually come from the barrels themselves. Well, once it leaches, like the whiskey flavor or bourbon flavor, whatever it is, whatever's left over is just the natural vanilla caramel sweetness that's just from the wood itself, which I just thought was pretty mind blowing. I never really thought about it like that before. Because I'm not a big whiskey drinker. I only like a certain styles. I mean, I like Jameson, for example, so it's Irish whiskey, so it's not as smoky as some American whiskeys are. So I thought that was really interesting. what kind of notes you can get from just letting something sit into another vessel and just pretty much leach from it. But,
Yeah,
I mean, that's a big gamble, right? I mean, how much money are you spending on just making this big beer just to dump it into a barrel? Like, you hope it's good.
so I would like to try this.
Oh, crap.
I had to already open it. Let's listen to Jeremy's. Oh,
Nothing?
nothing. You have to talk over it. You have to be like, ready, 1, 2, and then do it. But I had to open mine earlier because my wife won't let me drink any of these by myself. So she had she had the other half of my beer, which is nice actually, because for many reasons it's nice, but specifically because like I will go to a beer fest or whatever, and she's jealous that I'm there, but then I'll come home with like $200 or $300 worth of beer, and she'll look at me and be like mad that I only brought home $200 or $300 worth of beer, and not like the other guys who are getting mad or getting yelled at for bringing home like $100 worth of beer. So we have quite the beer collection in the basement, but I was able to share this one with Jeremy, and I'm excited to have him try it.
Yeah.
But again, these are like we were saying, these get better at about, I would say, like 50 to 60 degrees. In that range is like their sweet spot. They're not bad warmer than that, but they kind of have a lot less flavor at the colder end. They just change. It's like it's like a roller coaster ride. It's totally different.
And it's really, really cool. Yeah, I remember when I first discovered that with I think just an Imperial Stout. It wasn't like barrel aged or anything like that. It even said on the back of the bottle, like, serve at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm like, huh? That's interesting. 65 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like room 55, not 65, 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like, that's awfully warm. That's like at least 10, 15 degrees warmer than my fridge. It's like, all right, so I let it sit for like, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. Then I start drinking, like, it is kind of different. Then I sit a little longer, and like you said, like I think it was more of a chocolate stout, if anything. So those chocolate notes were just banging. But like you said, if the longer I let it sit, then it started to get bitter. Like, so I don't know if the coffee notes started to override the dark chocolate notes that were there, but it definitely was getting bitter. But this one, like, the first whiff I got was cherry, but I don't get that anymore.
Yeah, and it doesn't say cherry. It's like big chocolate in a barrel. But I definitely get a sweeter aroma that comes off of it. It's definitely sweet. So there's a lot of debate. Well, beer in general is a very big debatable topic. But the term imperial, so like if you break down the kind of beer, so it's like a barrel aged imperial stout. So what they're doing to make an imperial stout is basically just making quote unquote a big beer. So they basically take the amount of like hops and barley and malts and stuff, and just maybe not double it necessarily, but they just add a bunch more of the exact same stuff to like raise the alcohol content and the flavor. A lot of times they'll be called like doubles. So they would be doubling the batch or whatever, or just like a strong. It just produces like a super like high ABV. So you'll get like between, I would say, like 10 and 12%, somewhere in there for like just the imperial stouts. Typically, I would say are range between like 8 and 12% by themselves. And then barrel aging process adds another probably 3 to 5%, depending on I have some that are 18% ABV, but that depends on, I don't know what their original gravity was before like they barrel aged it and stuff. So
I feel like they have special tools to figure out what the actual final gravity is. For like a home brewer, what you would do is you could use like what is a hydrometer and a flask, or like I like to use as a little so it's an eyepiece, and it gives you bricks and the gravity, but you only have to put like a few drops on it. And so from there, if I just read the bricks, I can use a calculator. It'll give me my original gravity. But I noticed if I want to get my final gravity from that, it doesn't work very well. So I have to go back to using the flask and hydrometer to actually get it. And then I just do some math, and boom, I get what my gravity should be.
And what's the highest ABV beer you've brewed so far?
9 something.
And that was just a ton of
Belgian strong.
And in order to do that, you would need
a lot of sugar.
You would need a big container too, because like think about like these stouts or whatever have such a big grain bill to begin with. Like, so if you wanted to do like a 5 gallon batch, you would need almost like a 10 or 12 gallon like container to like hold all of those whole grains while you're like brewing them down.
Well, potentially even more. You mean 120, 20 gallon, right?
Yeah, it's just insane.
It is. It's quite insane. But I belong to a couple of homebrew clubs, and like what Mike was saying earlier, like with how they told me to make a Imperial was basically just double everything. So I think what Mike said was probably a little more accurate. I don't know if doubling is always the best way to do it. But the Belgian strong that I made, I ended up using just a lot of sugar. So I put 1.5 pounds of sugar into it, just table sugar, to boost up like the alcohol content.
Would that make it more like grain alcohol-y? Like, is that not just gonna like? Is it not gonna eat into like doing like hops to get the hops and malt to get the sugars out of those? I would think would give it more flavor than just table sugar. Like, I feel like table sugar would just basically boost the alcohol content artificially, essentially.
Yeah, it just gives you more alcohol. And that's kind of what I was going for, was a higher alcohol. But you also have to be careful because certain yeast strands will just stress out at a certain alcohol percentage. Like, it just dies. It doesn't know what to do. But with hops is a unique subject. I think we can save that one for a little bit later, because hops does some crazy stuff to do everything. But these barrel aged beers, I've noticed for myself, like a lot of them are really sweet.
This one started off sweet, but it's not as sweet now.
This one's different. This is smooth.
Yeah, I'm tasting a lot of the it's Perrin. No, I'm Perrin has probably one of my all-time favorite beers. So like on Untapped, I think it's one of my only. There's only like 3 beers that I've ever put at a 5, maybe only 2. And No Rules is a Perrin beer that they do. Mm-hmm. It's they call it a
Vietnamese porter.
Yeah, a Vietnamese porter. Yeah. So it's a barrel aged Vietnamese porter. It's got like just all kinds of notes and stuff. It's very, very sweet.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It's very, very sweet, but it's like 17% alcohol or something like that, and it's just super delicious. It's a dessert beer for sure. And that's what I feel like a lot of the barrel aged stuff ends up being.
And I don't feel like this one is really.
No. What I have noticed though is the more barrel aged beer I drink, the more I like the bourbon flavors. So I will find myself like drawn to like a bourbon, like a Woodford Reserve or something of that nature. Ezra Brooks is a good one that I like. And I've been going to like, so I don't know, because I'm just new to the bourbon drinking too, but they do like where the companies will let like local shops come and try like a specific barrel, and then they get their actual name on the label. So like I got an Ezra Brooks, but it was from Total Wine, so it was like Total Wine label on it, and I was like, that's kind of cool. So then they all taste different, which is kind of weird to me. And so during this process, or the barrel aging process too, it depends on the beer that or the original whiskeys or whatever you're using, because one of my other favorite breweries is in Chicago. They like use different stuff. They go to Buffalo Trace and they do like all these other like Blanton's barrels and stuff like that. So they'll have a lot of different mixes, and they just blend them all together at the end, because they don't want to like ruin the flavor, but it'll definitely taste different year to year. So it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely kind of turned me on to the whole barrel aged stuff. Like, it's kind of hard to get down here. I think I said this in the past in one of our episodes. Like, Tennessee has a unique law where like homebrew shops, but normal shops or grocery stores can't sell beers higher than 10.1%. Anything above that has to be sold at a liquor store. I'm not sure why that's a law. It just happens to be one of those strange laws that I've not figured out yet. So if I want something, either A, I have to wait till we might do a beer exchange, or I have to start searching in other states. Which is not a bad thing, because like I like going to Asheville, which is only like, hour drive. My son lives in South Carolina. It's like, we'll see him. So it gives me a chance to see other stuff out there, and try other things. I would like to get more of the what is that one that you like as well? It's like Goose Island, the county.
Yeah, that's the brewery I was talking about. It's called Bourbon County.
Yeah.
They do like a lot of that kind of stuff. So they'll mix it, but every year it's different. And then it was either last year or the year before, I actually got a 6-pack. And the 6-pack came with 2 beers from each of the barrels. So they had like a Weller's barrel, the Blanton's barrel, and then something else, Woodford barrel or something, before they mixed them all. So I would like to try those, but then it's like, I'm not going to open 3 bottles. And they're like 16 or 20 ounce bottles. And I'm like, I can't, even with my wife helping me, I can't drink 3 of those bottles in one night, but I want to try them all. So it's like, you have to find an excuse to like have like a party or something. But then like those ones aren't super expensive compared to like others. Like they range from like a Bourbon County. I feel like if you're new to it, I feel like that's probably one of the better ones. If you like a thick coffee flavor, but that's one of my favorites also. And I think that's a relatively cheap investment. If you see them at a store, they should be around like $14, $13 to $14 for the 20-ounce one.
I think it's 16 for mine, I think.
Yeah, you can see them anywhere up to like 25. I feel like 25, they're kind of ripping you off, but that's typically what happens in those like smaller mom and pop convenience store kind of places. And that, I guess, one of the other, I didn't start into this. Like they've been doing this in the United States since the 90s, which I found just amazing. Like I didn't even realize that it went back that far. But I didn't start this until probably about like 2017, 2018. And my friends were into it too. And they invited me to what they call FOBAB. It's Festival of Barrel Aged Beers. And that was insane. They had probably 200 beers that were like, they would pour you a barrel aged beer and you just go up and like try a bunch of stuff. I found some stuff that was amazing. But the issue with that for me is that you try a beer that you love and then it's from like Colorado and you'll never ever find it again. So I'm like, cool. Yeah. So I have to wait till next year to try this again because I'll never see it again. So that's why I try and get a few of everything so I have a backlog and stuff. So it's kind of nice.
I do have a couple questions for you. The first one, you may not know the answer to, but the question is, since this started back in the 1990s, do you know who the first company or commercial brewery that offered a barrel-aged beer at all with your research? Or was it just the statement that this started back in the 90s?
Yeah, it was just a statement that I started back in the 90s for me. I just did like the quick... the quick search as far as, because I can't imagine it being that great, because like the microbrews back in the 90s were really, really terrible too. And I would only imagine, like, I can't see well, they weren't that big also, but then like how much money can you spend on it? So I'm like, I don't know where they would have gone with that. Because like you were saying, either in this episode or the last episode, that's a lot of money to kind of spend to do something and age it for 9 months, and then you would never know when it was done. And then if it was done too early, obviously you've got to take pulls off of it every once in a while, but still, like, that would be so nerve-wracking to do your own something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I can imagine doing 30 gallons of a beer to throw into a barrel and hope to God that it turned into something delicious. I wouldn't mind trying. So you can buy little small kegs, or casks. I guess that's what they're called. I don't know if they're pre-charred. I would hope they were. I hope they are. But I feel like you would have to soak your own liquor into it to first, like, to rehydrate the wood and stuff like that before you put your beer into it. And that might be a fun little experiment to try one day. But before I get too far into that subject, my other question is going to be based on, I know you like to go to breweries, but have you been to any like homebrew competitions? And if you have they had any home barrel aged beers there?
No, I've never been to any homebrew anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like we used to have adventures of homebrewing in like a shop you could go into, but then like when I got into it, it was during the pandemic and they shut everything down and they realized that they could just sell stuff online and not have to open. They never opened back up, which was a bummer.
Yeah, they have a pretty big name, so I think they'll do very, very well. So down where I live in the Tri-Cities of Tennessee, we have two, well, there's actually three, but they have really two big home brew um, festivals, basically. One is called Orange. Oh, what a crap. Thirsty Orange, that's what it's called. And that is April 29th. Those are in the Tri-Cities area. Sadly, I won't be around. I wanted to be there, but I'm going to go hang out with my cousins instead. And then there's Hoppy Possum, which is in September. That one is more for home brewers, from what I understand. They're both really, really fun. So, yeah. So there's going to be people there that's going to have some crazy beers. And I believe one of my home brew clubs, Brian, he makes barrel-aged beers. And they're all 10.1%.
So, are you tasting any differences now in the beer now that it's been sitting for a little bit longer?
The booziness is not as strong.
Right. I feel like that's all you taste in the beginning is the booziness.
I like it. It's definitely one of the cleaner. Clean is not a good term.
No, it's hard to explain like what that means. Like
the most I've had with you when I was up there in February, they were very thick and viscous. This isn't. This is not thin like the last beer we had. It has body, it has mouthfeel. You know, it's kind of velvety. It's not as velvety as the other ones I've had with you, but I think I think the lactose definitely contributes to being that velvety on your tongue feel. The chocolate notes, I think are still strong on the nose, but there's still a lot of booze there. I mean, I like it. I mean, if it is not 100% jet black, I mean, it is almost there. It is a very dark beer.
Oh, yeah,
it's really, really good. I'd be kind of curious if it's filtered as well too. I wonder if that's what happened to like the leaner taste that I'm getting.
Yeah, I thought that it was cool. Well, when I was trying to do research for this episode, I was trying to figure out what it was and then realized that it wasn't like any of their staples. And I was like, oh, crap. So like the little bit of information is literally just like it's barrel-aged stout with big chocolate and barrel characters. I'm like, that's not a whole lot of information. But it's from there. It says on the thing, it's from there. We loved barrel-aged beer from the start. 10 years later, we're spending 9 months in a bourbon barrel. It's a definition of decadence. So I thought it was pretty cool. And
good
like
beer.
we went in there and they didn't have, because it was a summer thing. I think it was like September. It was fall, I guess, but it was like hot in September, and like they had some very special barrel-aged stuff on tap outside, and that was really, really hard to drink. And it was fun because that was where I tried, they have an IPA, but it's called Blackberry IPA, and Perrin it's a very fruity IPA and has very little of the like orange rind / grapefruit flavors. So
Really? Okay.
they consider it an IPA, but I would consider it more like a sour or closer to a sour than an IPA, but they just put the IPA label on it and call it good.
Yeah, it's hard to. I feel like a lot of it's just marketing sometimes, or maybe they use certain hops that are just used to be known to be in like IPAs or whatever. So it's just like, just easier.
Well, I think I keep saying this, but it's just a buzzword. They keep using it as like people that like IPAs are like, oh, I'll try that. It's an IPA. And then you go to a brewery, and I would say, say half typically are IPAs. If they had 10 beers on tap, 5 of them are IPAs of some sort.
Probably, yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer for me. But again, that's the reason of this podcast, and I need to figure out like what of those buzzwords I do like. Like if it's a juicy IPA, does that taste more in like a realm of stuff and more in a realm of something that I'll like or whatever. But so that's what I guess from these two, I didn't like stouts before, and the more of these I drink, the more I get used to the coffee flavors, the more a stout tastes better to me now than it used to. The bitterness is kind of going away, so my tastes are definitely changing for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think they change every decade or so anyways. Like things you used to like as a kid, you don't like anymore. Like But since you brought up like going to breweries and stuff like that, I'm not going to put any on blast. That's not what this is about. But I think a good way to measure a brewery is if they have any lagers, cloches, pilsners, like really simple beers. Get that first before you buy anything else. If they can make one of those three like really, really good, like the rest of the beers are going to be good. If you get one of those and it doesn't taste too good, well, the rest of the beers will probably taste fine. You know, you may not see any difference, but like they have a hard time honing their skills on that, which which is fine too, because some people it is an art form. You're talking like very like 2-3 ingredients. There's not much to them at all. But Mike always likes me to pick my brain about like how would I make a barrel aged beer. Well, first of all, I wouldn't. No, just kidding, I would. But how would I go about doing it? So after I've talked to a bunch of people in the past about it, like I think what I would like to do is the one technique that seems to be brought up a lot in my homebrew clubs, is they like to take the chips from barrels and they'll char them themselves. They'll freeze it, right? And I guess that does something to it chemically. I don't know what it does, but it does something to it chemically. Then they'll take it out of the freezer, soak it in whatever whiskey that they want, take it back out of that, and take all those wood chips and put it into their big beer and just let it like as like their last stage, like 1 week of that. And everything I've had from my homebrew clubs have been phenomenal. They've been really, really good. And these are just, granted, you know, these guys have been probably brewing 40 years or so. So I mean, they know a lot of tips and tricks. It's one because one homebrew club, I swear to God, there's like 600 years of knowledge there, because they're all guys who are like I said, 30 to 40 years of experience, and it's a fairly large club. So they know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff for sure.
So, sorry, I was gonna say like, so you are, I guess, I would consider your brewing more experimental in the beginning, because you're still in you're in your infancy, let's say, of brewing. So like you really want to make as much as you can to discover like what's out there and to kind of figure that out. Where do you think they're taking like whatever beer, like their big beer, so like if they made an Imperial Stout, just they were taking that and honing that in before they even try and barrel age it?
I would think so. I think like a lot of these guys already have like recipes that are just their go-to recipes.
Yeah.
There's one individual who makes phenomenal beer, but he's always wanting to improve constantly. So he's always asking for feedback, and he wants you to tear his stuff apart. But it's hard to, because it's so good. Like he's like, we had one homebrew competition and he won like 3 out of the 4 categories. I'm like, he's just good. I'm like we can't help you. You're really good at it, guy. Yeah, but I think that would be my goal once I get past experimenting. Basically, like Mike was saying, I will come across, or I'll come to a time basically that we're like, I like this beer. Can't make it again.
Well,
will it taste the same? Yeah, it's true. But will it taste the same every time? That's the whole thing. I think once I can do that, then I can say I'm a decent brewer.
Okay.
Well, say I'm good. I'll be decent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that it'll hit you when you're in the moment. Like, so you'll taste something and be like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then you taste it again like a week later and you're like, oh, I could do this, this, and this. And then the longer it sits on CO2 and stuff like that, I feel like maybe that would cause it to like change a little bit too. If you're kegging it versus bottling it, the bottle conditioning stuff, I feel like that will flush me too. Like I get kind of allergic reactions to that kind of stuff. So
when we get the smoke beers, remind me to bring up some interesting facts about that stuff too, because I guess I've not made any, but I learned some stuff this week from some.
That's cool.
So yeah.
So this is really ruining our like friendship, because now we can only talk about stuff on this podcast about beer. So then the rest of the time we're just like, oh.
Oh, we talk about this podcast, talk about beers, it would be fine.
I'm just kidding. It's not ruining our friendship. And on that note,
friendship over.
Yeah, I would like to extend an invite for everybody out there that is listening to this podcast that hasn't tried a barrel aged beer to try it. If you don't like the stouts in general, don't let that stop you, because like I said, I didn't like them to begin with either. My wife hated them. She still hates them, but she loves this stuff. So I would recommend I would recommend doing a little bit of research before you just buy one, because I've had a lot of really terrible ones. Jump on Untapped and look through there, and I won't buy any that are under like 4, because like they like are hit or miss, and some of them try too hard. But like I would highly recommend it, and I hope.
Or even ask your friends.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe you have some friends that try it. If
or
not, you can
like open a bottle and
us.
split it with a couple of people.
There's that too. You can email us and ask us as well too. You know, maybe we can give you a couple like our top 5 that we like. Like, here, this is what we like. You can just try them out.
Yep.
And they're not too badly priced, like Mike was saying. You know, anywhere from like, I would say probably the cheapest you could probably find one for is probably $5. That's what I found before, all the way up to. Gosh, I mean, I'm sure the sky's the limit on price, but I don't think I'd go above $20 ever on a bottle of beer. That's me. That's my personal 2 cents.
Yeah, it's like a bottle of wine. I feel like, and also they age, so you'll get a different flavor the longer they sit, but there's a shelf life. I wouldn't recommend anything more than like 5 to 7 years, but people like go gaga over some shit that's been sitting for like 10 years, and I'm like, nope, I wouldn't drink something that's been sitting for 10 years. Somebody drank that like clear Pepsi and almost died, so I don't think so.
Well, that could be a fun episode. We could actually come across, say, like maybe next winter or whatever. We'll have like another barrel age, and then we'll wait like 6 months. We'll try it again to see what we think of it. I think it'd be a fun.
I mean, we could do that with your beer too, which is kind of what I wanted to do.
Yep, definitely.
Anyhow.
Eventually, we'll get to my beers. There you
go. All right. Well, I think that's a good wrapping up point for us. Yeah. If you can enjoy a beer with your pals, or a pint, if you will, with your pals, I would recommend it. Drink responsibly and all that kind of good stuff. But
yeah, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff.
I forgot about all that.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We're terrible at this.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good day, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.